Algebra Chapter 2, Lessons 1 and 2, and we want to wrap up our look at absolute values in this lesson by looking at, in an algebraic expression then, where do we simplify the absolute value? What part of PEMDAS or order of operations is that? And so let's take a look at that. The absolute value symbol is a grouping symbol. In other words, the things that are inside are considered a group, and therefore will need to be simplified first, inside. And then we need to take the absolute value of that symbol, once we've simplified it, as part of our grouping symbol. So it kind of falls along the side of the P in PEMDAS, or the parentheses, the brackets, the grouping symbols. The only catch here is, and this is very important, is that you can't remove the absolute value symbol by distributing. You remember, the only way to remove a parentheses or a bracket in an algebraic expression is to apply the distributive property. And that's pretty much true with those grouping symbols. But the absolute value, you cannot use the distributive property to remove those absolute value symbols. So it's a grouping symbol, and the things inside need to be simplified, and we need to simplify that before we move forward with multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting. But they're not a grouping symbol in the sense that you can use the distributive property to remove it. Okay, so very important point and very important thing to be aware of. So basically, as a grouping symbol, the expressions inside all need to be simplified as far as we can first. Once we've done that, then we simplify the absolute value by asking ourselves the question, how far is this away from 0? And then once we've done that, we remove the absolute value symbol, because you remember our answer to that question is the absolute value simplified. Then we can go ahead and finish off by doing any adding or subtracting that we need to do. So looking from left to right at our example here, then we have the absolute value of -5 plus the absolute value of 6 plus 5. So because these are grouping symbols, anything inside would need to be simplified first. So the -5 is already simplified, but we can add the 6 and a 5 together to get 11. So we've done the grouping or the simplifying of what's inside, but now we actually have to simplify the absolute value before we go further. So I simplify the absolute value of -5 by asking myself the question, self, how far is -5 away from 0? Well, it's 5 away from 0. Plus then, self, how far is the absolute value of 11 away from 0? Well, 11. So I've now simplified or removed those absolute value symbols, so now I can go ahead and do the addition of 5 plus 11, which is 16. And this is going to be very important again as we get to in our future lessons where we start adding and subtracting these negative and positive numbers, that we don't try to do that while this grouping symbol is around them. If we do, we're going to come up with some very, well, incorrect answers. So I'm going to do a couple more examples just so we kind of get the feel of this, and then we'll wrap this up. So in our first expression here, we have the absolute value of -5 times, it's in parentheses, so it's multiplication, the absolute value of -6 times the absolute value of 0. So inside each of these symbols, everything is simplified, but I do need to now simplify the absolute value before I can go through and multiply. So the absolute value of -5 is 5. It's 5 away from 0. The absolute value of -6 is 6. It's 6 away from 0. And the absolute value of 0 is 0 because it's 0 away from 0. So I remove the grouping symbol, the absolute value symbol, so now I can do my multiplication. 6 times 5 is 30, times 0 is 0, so the answer to this would be 0. Okay, taking a look at the second example very quickly then, we have the absolute value of 8 times the absolute value of negative 2 minus the absolute value of 5. So again, the absolute value being a grouping symbol, we would simplify anything that's inside, everything's simplified, but now we need to remove those grouping symbols by simplifying each expression. So the absolute value of 8 is 8, that's 8 away from 0. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2, that's 2 away from 0, minus the absolute value of 5, that's 5, that's 5 away from 0. Now I can continue my order of operations doing multiplication first. So 8 times 2 is 16 minus 5. And now I can do my subtraction. 16 minus 5 is 11. So the simplified answer of this is 11. Okay, so absolute value symbols are a type of grouping symbol. We do have to simplify what's inside, but in removing those, we cannot use the distributive property. We need to simplify the absolute value symbol by asking ourselves the question, how far is this expression away from 0? Then once we've taken care of those grouping symbols, we can go ahead and continue with our order of operations.